I still remember the exact smell of motor oil and burnt copper in the air when my world ended. It was a Wednesday afternoon in early spring. Nathan Rhodes, 36, was up on a scaffold inside an old bottling plant outside Columbus, Ohio, rewiring a corroded panel that had probably last been touched when Bill Clinton was in office. I've been a journeyman electrician for almost 15 years, and I like my work. It's honest, it's precise, and it pays well enough to keep food on the table for me, my wife Claire, and our 16-year-old daughter Emily. That day, my hands were deep in a nest of tangled wires, and I was sweating into my goggles when my phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it. Then it buzzed again, and again. 3 missed calls in under 2 minutes. I climbed down the ladder, pulled off my gloves, and checked the screen. All 3 calls were from my neighbor, Jared, a quiet guy who mainly kept to himself. He wasn't the type to call for casual chit-chat. When I answered, his voice was panicked. "Nate, man, I'm sorry if this is overstepping, but you need to come home. Now. What's going on?" "There's a moving truck in your driveway. Some guys are loading furniture. I saw Claire out front. She's supervising it all." My heart slammed into my ribs like a wrecking ball. "What?" "Yeah, man. The big sectional, your flat screen, even that custom wood coffee table you built. It's already in the truck." "Are you kidding me right now?" "I swear on my life, dude. And there's some guy there, too. Tall, wearing Ray-Bans. Looks like he owns the damn house." I didn't even hang up. I just stuffed my phone into my pocket, told my foreman I had an emergency, and peeled out of the parking lot like a bat out of hell. It took me 17 minutes to get home. I counted every second. The sight of that 26-foot U-Haul half parked on my lawn nearly made me throw up. And there she was, Claire, the woman I married right after college, the mother of my child, dressed in yoga pants and a designer windbreaker, holding a clipboard and talking calmly to a crew of movers. She wasn't crying. She wasn't frantic. She was in control, confident, composed. But what made my blood run cold was the man standing next to her. He was tall, tan, probably early 40s, with a clean beard and an expensive watch that shimmered even in the cloudy Ohio light. He pointed toward the house, then at the truck, clearly giving orders. I parked my truck halfway into the neighbor's driveway, jumped out without even closing the door, and marched straight up the driveway. "Who the hell are you?" I barked. He barely turned his head. "Not your concern, man. Step aside." Wrong answer. I didn't plan to hit him. My body simply acted. My fist crashed into his jaw with enough force to echo across the street. The Ray-Bans flew off. He went down hard, and I was on top of him in a blur of fists and curses. I heard Claire shouting, but I couldn't stop. 17 years. 17 goddamn years? Was it all fake? Claire grabbed my shoulder and yanked me back. "Nate, stop. What the hell is wrong with you?" I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw no fear, no remorse, just irritation. "Do you know him?" I asked, breath heaving. She crossed her arms. "Yes, that's Bryce. We've been seeing each other for a while." It felt like someone took a crowbar to my ribs. Claire went on like she was giving a weather report. "I was going to call you later today. I just didn't want to deal with a scene." "Oh, so this isn't a scene to you?" I shouted. "You sneak around behind my back, invite your boyfriend to my house, start hauling out our stuff without a word, and I'm the one causing a scene?" Then the sirens came. Red and blue lights flashed behind me as 2 patrol cars pulled up. Neighbors peeked out from behind curtains. The show was just getting started. One officer stepped between me and Bryce, who was now sitting up, wiping blood from his mouth. "What's going on here?" the cop demanded. "I live here," I said, trying to sound calmer than I felt. "I came home to find strangers loading my furniture into a truck. My wife didn't tell me she was leaving. I thought it was a robbery. Claire rolled her eyes. I'm taking what's mine. Ma'am, the cop said sternly, you can't just remove marital property without a court order. Until a judge rules on the split, nothing major leaves this house. Claire's face twisted in disbelief. But half of it is mine. And you'll get your share, the cop said. Legally. Not like this. I didn't say a word. I just stared at her. I thought I knew Claire. I thought she was my partner, my ride or die. But that day on Maple Street, watching her stand beside another man with our couch in a moving truck ... I realized I didn't know her at all. I was still driving like a madman when the shock turned into rage. The U-Haul truck, the strange men. My wife standing there like a project manager, clipboard in hand, wearing the yoga pants I bought her last Christmas. None of it made sense. Not after 17 years of what I thought was loyalty, teamwork, and love. My hands gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. I blew past a red light. Horns blared behind me, but I didn't care. I had to get home before they took everything. Before she erased me from our life. And then I saw it. Our neighborhood came into view, that line of maple trees on Sycamore Drive, swaying in the breeze like nothing was wrong. I turned the corner, and there it was, a 26-foot U-Haul truck parked halfway up our lawn, crooked and obnoxious, like it owned the damn place. I could see two men I didn't recognize lifting our leather couch, the one we saved up for to the truck. And standing right there next to them was her, Kayla. Tank top, ponytail, clipboard, no panic, no guilt. Just another day of organizing furniture theft. I slammed my brakes, the truck jerking to a halt so hard the tires screeched. I left the door wide open and ran. I didn't even notice my phone fall out of my pocket. My only focus was the man standing beside her. Tall, sunglasses, smirking, giving directions like he lived here. Who the hell are you? I barked, stepping into his space. He barely glanced at me. Back off, man. We're busy. I didn't decide to punch him. My fist just moved. Instinct. Pure fury. I hit him so hard, he spun sideways and hit the pavement. Blood spurted from his lip. The sunglasses went flying. The guy let out a strangled yelp. Then I was on top of him. 17 years. Sleepless nights. Cold dinners reheated alone. Missed birthdays. All of it came out of me like a storm. Punch after punch. I didn't care who saw. That's when I heard her voice. Daniel, stop. I turned my head slightly. Kyla was rushing toward me, her face a mix of panic and disbelief. Get off him, she screamed, trying to shove me. I stumbled back, just enough to see her drop to the ground and cradle the stranger's head in her lap. She was crying. For him. That's when the final nail drove into my chest. You know him? I asked, breathing hard, blood on my hands. She looked up, face flushed, eyes angry. This is Ryan. He's my partner. My boyfriend. My mouth dried instantly. I stood there, stunned, like someone had turned off all the sound around me. My wife, my teammate, my best friend, boyfriend? Everything went silent. The sound of birds chirping, the wind rustling the trees, even the buzzing in my ears faded into this surreal vacuum. Then I lost it again. I kicked Ryan square in the ribs. He curled like a shrimp and wheezed, gasping for air. Kayla screamed again, shoving me with more force this time. My hands clenched. I wanted to destroy anything. But instead, I pulled out my phone with bloody fingers and called 911. There's a robbery in progress. I told the dispatcher. My house, my address. A man is trying to take our belongings. He's here with my wife. By the time the cops showed up, half the neighborhood had gathered on their porches, like it was some kind of Sunday soap opera. Blue and red lights danced across the driveway. 2 officers jumped out. What's going on here? The taller one barked. I live here, I said, gesturing toward the house. This man was loading up our furniture. My wife says she's leaving me, but I didn't agree to anything. "Ma'am?" the cop asked Kayla. She nodded. "We're splitting. I'm taking my half." "You can't just take property from a shared marital home without legal documentation," the officer said, sighing. "It's considered theft, even if it's technically yours." She looked stunned, but I was just, "No, ma'am, not without a court order." One of the cops started making the movers return the items they'd already taken. Ryan, now sitting upright and holding his ribs, didn't say a word. Just glared at me like he'd been the victim. Kayla hissed under her breath, "This isn't over." "Oh, honey," I muttered. "This is just getting started." I don't remember how long I sat on the edge of that living room couch, but when the front door finally opened, the whole atmosphere changed. Footsteps, a backpack hitting the floor, then her voice. "Dad?" It was Lily, our daughter. 16, smart, observant, the kind of girl who memorizes poetry and watches documentaries for fun. She walked in, her face confused at first, then stunned. The living room still had the bruises of war-hour furniture, all disorganized from the movers, hastily putting things back, a dark stain on the carpet from where Nolan's blood had dripped, and me sitting in the middle of it all, like a ghost still haunting his former life. "Why are you home?" she asked, slinging off her jacket. I looked up, trying to force my face into something calm, fatherly. "Come sit down, Lily. We need to talk." She hesitated, like she knew already. Something in her teenage radar was picking up the emotional wreckage radiating off me. She dropped her bag and sat beside me. "Your mom left," I said. She blinked, barely a reaction. "Left ... where?" She moved out. "She's seeing someone else. His name's Nolan. They've been ... together for a while." There it was. A moment the world should crack in half. But it didn't. She just nodded, barely a twitch in her expression. "You knew?" I asked. Lily looked down at her hands. "Yeah, I mean, she told me about him. Months ago." It felt like my lungs turned inside out. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, though I already feared the answer. She said if I ruined it, she'd send me to stay with my aunt in Arizona. Sighed I wouldn't see my friends again. Said it was complicated. I was too stunned to speak, too hollowed out by betrayal to even get angry. My wife had threatened our daughter into silence, into complicity. "She told me Nolan was her first love," Lily said quietly, "that they reconnected online, that you were the safe choice. But he was the one who made her heart beat." I don't remember standing. I don't remember grabbing my keys. But I do remember walking out the front door, numb. I drove nowhere and everywhere, the city blurring past as I tried to breathe. I wasn't just betrayed. I was erased, rewritten out of my own marriage as the safe guy who played his part while she waited for her fantasy to reappear. I ended up parked in a church parking lot, not because I'm religious, but because it was quiet and no one would bother me. I stared out the windshield, hands clenched on the wheel, until night fell. Then I called someone I never thought I'd call again, Mark Steele, old friend from college. "Divorce attorney? Jake?" He answered, surprised. "I need to file," I said. "Fast, today, if possible. And I want her to get the bare minimum the law allows." He didn't ask why. Just told me to come in at 9 a.m. I went home late, well after Lily had gone to bed. I stood in the doorway of her room for a long time, watching her sleep. She looked so much like her mother. It broke my heart and healed it at the same time. The next morning, I handed Mark the full story. Every detail. The affair, the theft attempt, the coercion. His eyes narrowed with each page of notes. "She messed up," he said, "and I'm going to make sure the court sees every bit of it." Then we began the purge. I emptied our joint account, leaving exactly $64, the amount she'd deposited in the last year. I changed all the passwords, froze assets, reassigned my insurance beneficiary to my sister, called my company and had them block Lila's access to anything financial. Then I canceled Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, our shared gym membership, even the grocery delivery subscription. All of it. Then I waited. Lila didn't call. She texted once, "You're being childish." That was it. Until 3 days later, when a process server handed her the divorce papers at the yoga studio where she worked. According to Mark Sky, she went pale as marble and sat down on her mat without a word. Good. I wanted her to feel, if only for a second, the shock I felt that day she tried to vanish me out of our life. The silence in the house was no longer peace, it was pressure. Heavy, humming pressure. Every creak of the floor felt like a scream in my ears. After the confrontation in the kitchen, I hadn't slept. Not really. Just laid there staring at the ceiling, my mind playing every word Mia had said like it was a courtroom recording. He makes me feel like I did before life got hard. That line haunted me like a curse. I walked through the house in the early hours, looking at everything we built. This wasn't just furniture and drywall. This was 17 years of sacrifices, overtime, anniversary dinners, hospital visits, midnight baby cries. And she was walking away from all of it like it meant nothing. The next morning, I didn't go to work. I called my supervisor and simply said I had a personal crisis. He didn't ask for details. He could probably hear the fatigue in my voice. I spent that day in the garage, not fixing anything, just staring at tools I'd bought over years of being a provider, protector, husband, father. Around noon, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find her mother, Linda. Mia's mom had always been tough but fair, the kind of woman who could scare a grown man into apologizing with just a glare. She walked in like she owned the place, holding a Tupperware container and her signature no-nonsense stare. "Where's Mia?" she asked without preamble. I gestured vaguely. "Gone." She said she needed time to think. Linda sat at the kitchen table and popped open the container lasagna, still warm. She slid a fork across the table toward me. "You need to eat. You look like hell." "I'm not hungry." "Doesn't matter. Eat." I took a bite, mostly out of reflex. The warmth surprised me, and so did the tears that welled up uninvited. "She's been seeing him for months, hasn't she?" I whispered. Linda didn't respond right away. She just sipped her tea and stared at the wall. "I had a feeling," she finally said. "Mothers know. But Mia, she's stubborn. She wouldn't listen. She told our daughter that he's her soulmate." Linda put her tea down with a clink. "I didn't raise her to behave like this, Travis." I looked at her. "Did you know?" She hesitated. I suspected. A mother always knows when her child is lying, even if they're grown. But I never thought she'd do this. I almost asked, "Why didn't you say something?" But I already knew the answer. No one wants to believe their daughter is the villain in someone else's story. That evening, I picked up Emma from her friend's house. She barely spoke on the ride home. Her phone buzzed nonstop. I glanced at it, a group chat. She was texting Mia. At the stoplight, I said, "Did you know your mom was planning to leave?" Emma didn't look at me. "She said you'd figure it out eventually." "That's not what I asked." Silence. "I saw her with him once," she said finally. "At the coffee shop near her work. She said he was just a friend." I didn't believe her. "And you didn't tell me?" I thought if I ignored it, it would go away. I pulled over and turned to face her. "Emma, I'm your father. You can tell me anything. I needed to know." "I didn't want to break our family," she whispered. I laughed bitterly. "And what do you think has happened now?" She looked away, wiping a tear. That night, after she went to bed, I made my decision. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to chase. I was going to burn the bridge behind me and walk forward. The next morning, I called my friend Jason, divorce lawyer. We'd been on the same baseball team as kids. I helped him build his back porch a few summers ago. Jason, I need to file. There was silence on the line for a beat. I'll be at your house in 2 hours. And Travis? I'm sorry, man. That night, I slept. I didn't sleep for 2 nights straight. Not because I was heartbroken, though. Maybe a part of me was. But mostly because I was angry. Not the kind of hot, chaotic anger you feel during a fight. This was the cold kind, the kind that sits quietly in your chest and plans everything. I replayed what Lydia had said in that courtroom, and every word felt like a slap. She didn't want custody. She didn't even try to fight for our daughter. And Claire? She looked at me like I was the problem, like I was the one who had ruined everything. No, that wasn't how this was going to end. I spent the next morning reviewing every financial document I had, our accounts, the insurance policies, the retirement plans. I'd already removed Lydia as the beneficiary. But now I went one step further. I had the lawyer freeze any shared asset that hadn't yet been touched. Marcus made sure of that. He was relentless. She's not getting a dime she didn't earn, he said. And based on what I've seen, that's not a lot. The house had been mine before we were married. I paid the mortgage every month. Lydia had barely contributed past the first few years. The car was mine, the retirement fund untouched by her. I left her what the court ordered, and nothing more. But it wasn't about the money anymore. It was about reclaiming my dignity. My life, the last 17 years, had been built on a lie, but I wasn't going to let that lie define me. And I sure as hell wasn't going to let Lydia and her fairy tale boyfriend rewrite the narrative. It was time for me to disappear, not in a cowardly way, but in a way that made a statement, a clean break. So I did what any man pushed to the edge does. I reinvented myself. I gave notice at work, shocking everyone. But I wasn't leaving in shame. I had options. Over the years, I'd picked up certifications and contacts. My reputation in the electrical contracting world was solid. I reached out to a guy I'd helped on a project in Denver, someone who now ran a growing firm. Within a week, I had an offer, more pay, better hours, and most importantly, a new start. I sold the house. Didn't even tell Lydia until the paperwork was done. Since the house had always been in my name and was excluded from joint marital assets, she couldn't stop me. I gave Claire the option to visit, stay weekends if she wanted. She didn't respond. Maybe she was still angry. Maybe she just didn't care. That was what hurt the most. I packed everything I needed into a rented van, drove 16 hours west with nothing but silence and the hum of the road. I found a small rental near the mountains, quiet, unassuming, peaceful. And for the first time in months, I slept. A month passed. I worked long hours, but slept better than I had in years. My face started looking like mine again in the mirror. The weight on my shoulders gone. No more drama. No more walking on eggshells. No more pretending things were okay when they never were. Then, one evening, I got a message. It was from Claire. Just one line. I don't know where you went, but I miss you. My heart clenched. I read it over and over. I didn't respond immediately. I sat with it for hours. The next morning, I wrote back, "You know where I am now. When you're ready, come find me. But I'm not chasing you anymore, Claire. I already did that for too many years." She didn't reply. 2 weeks later, I was on a job site, wiring the main panel of a commercial space, when my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a call. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something in my gut told me to. It was Lydia. Her voice sounded hollow, like a person who had finally realized the consequences of her own wreckage. "Daniel, I don't know where you are, but Claire's been asking about you. She She hasn't been the same. I didn't say anything. She thinks you abandoned her, Lydia whispered. I nearly laughed. She told me I was just the safe choice, remember? Just the guy who paid the bills while you ran off with your college fantasy. That doesn't sound like someone who cared I was gone. Silence on the line. Then she said something that chilled me. Zach, he left. Just packed up and went back to Seattle. Said he wasn't ready for this. Said Claire wasn't his responsibility. I closed my eyes. Of course, the fairy tale ended like they all do, ugly and disappointing. Claire doesn't deserve this, Lydia added. Neither did I said. Before she could say anything else, I hung up. I didn't sleep the night after my meeting with Marcus. My thoughts spun in every direction, full of regret and rage, of memories both beautiful and broken. I sat in the empty living room, staring at the same walls I had painted with Emily the summer we bought the place. Those walls had witnessed laughter, family game nights, bedtime stories, and now, betrayal. I was done playing the victim. By morning, I had executed almost everything Marcus and I discussed. My 401 was protected, Melissa's name removed as beneficiary. I had moved most of our savings into a new account under my name and left exactly $39 in the joint one. The bank teller had raised an eyebrow, but I told her plainly, that is exactly what she's contributed in the last 18 months. I even changed the passcodes on every streaming service, canceled our shared gym membership, and switched our car insurance plan so that her name was no longer included. But the hardest step came later that afternoon, when I returned home from a quick lunch and saw my daughter sitting silently on the front porch. Ava, my girl, my child. And yet, every time I looked at her, I couldn't help but replay her words from that awful conversation. Mom says they're soulmates. She only married you because you were safe. Safe. The word echoed through my chest like a cruel joke. Still, she was only 16. She was manipulated. She was scared. She was, above all, my daughter. And that still meant something to me, even if I wasn't as sure how to deal with it anymore. Hey, I said, approaching. She looked up slowly, her eyes red-rimmed, as if she hadn't slept either. Hi, Dad. Can we talk? She nodded. We went inside and sat in the same living room that had become a war zone the day Melissa tried to strip it clean. I know everything's been chaos, I started, my voice rough, but I need to ask you something straight. Why didn't you tell me? Ava lowered her gaze. Mom said, if I told you about Jordan, she'd send me away, said I'd ruin everything. I felt a tightness in my chest that rivaled any anger I had felt before. She threatened you? She nodded. I didn't want to choose between you two, but she made me. And you chose her, I said, not with bitterness, but resignation. Ava's lip trembled. I didn't want to lose either of you. I stared at her, realizing for the first time that she wasn't just a participant, she was collateral. Used and manipulated by a woman too selfish to see the damage she was doing to her own child. I sighed deeply. I'm not mad at you, kiddo. I'm hurt. I'm confused, but not mad. She burst into tears, and I did what instinct told me to. I pulled her into a hug. For a moment, it felt like nothing had changed. Like the world hadn't been flipped upside down. Like I was still her hero. And maybe, just maybe, I could be that again someday. We talked for over an hour. She told me about how Melissa and Jordan had taken her to dinners, movies, even on a day trip to the coast, all behind my back. How she had to pretend everything was normal at home. How guilty she felt every time I smiled at her, not knowing what was going on. I hated lying to you, she said. I know, I replied. And I hate that you were put in that position. That evening, Ava asked if she could stay with her grandparents for a while. I think I need space, she said. I agreed. But I also told her, you'll always have a place here. Always. The next few days passed in a strange fog. Melissa called several times. I didn't pick up. She left voicemails that ranged from angry to desperate to manipulative. One night, she showed up at the house. I almost didn't answer the door, but curiosity won. She looked worn, her hair unkempt, eyes puffy. "You're not answering my calls," she said. "Nope. We need to talk." "We really don't." She stepped inside anyway. "Where's Ava?" she asked. "At her grandparents'." "She needed space from you, too." Melissa winced. "This isn't how I wanted things to go." "No? You didn't want me to catch your boyfriend loading my furniture into a truck? You didn't want me to find out about the affair from our daughter?" She flinched, but didn't deny it. "I made mistakes," she said, her voice trembling. "No, Melissa. You made a series of choices. Repeatedly. Deliberately. You weren't drunk. You weren't confused. You knew exactly what you were doing every time you texted him, every time you kissed him, every time you looked at me and lied." She had no defense. Just silence. "I'm filing this week," I said. "Marcus is handling everything." Tears welled in her eyes. "What about Ava? She wants nothing to do with you right now." And frankly, I don't blame her. Melissa reached out, but I stepped back. "We're done," I said. That was the last time she came to the house. And for the first time in weeks, I slept soundly. The day the divorce papers were officially filed felt like stepping out of a burning house into the cold morning air. My hands were still shaking from everything that had happened, but there was clarity too. A painful, sobering clarity. Melissa had made her choices. Ava was beginning to untangle herself from the web her mother had spun. And I was finally standing on my own 2 feet again. Marcus, true to his word, was a force of nature in court. The temporary hearing to freeze joint assets had been approved almost instantly. And now, with all the documentation lined up bank transfers, 401 records, text logs from Ava confirming the affair, we were more than ready for what lay ahead. I had never intended to weaponize the truth, but the facts spoke louder than any revenge ever could. When someone spends years dismantling a life you built with love and effort, all you really want is to survive the wreckage without losing your soul in the process. I moved out of the house 3 weeks later. I found a modest but clean 2-bedroom apartment about 20 minutes from my job site. It wasn't flashy, but it was mine. The walls were empty, but they didn't echo with betrayal. Just possibility. I kept one room ready for Ava, should she ever decide she wanted to come back. I painted it a soft blue, her favorite color since she was 8. I bought a new bed, a small desk, and even a bean-bag chair like the one she used to read in. Ava had reached out a few times through text, mostly one-liners like, "I miss you," or "Hope you're okay." I responded, gently but carefully. I didn't want to rush her. Trust had to be rebuilt slowly, like laying bricks with fragile mortar. One wrong move, and the whole structure could crumble again. Melissa, on the other hand, had started slipping into desperation. Her lawyer tried to push for spousal support, but Marcus shut it down, citing equal income levels. She wanted half the house Marcus proved it was mine before marriage. She claimed she was entitled to my retirement fund. Marcus produced documentation of it being established 2 years prior to our wedding. The judge saw through it all. Melissa had underestimated just how thoroughly I had prepared. She had expected the sad, stunned man from the driveway. Instead, she got the man who had spent nights awake, studying legal documents, meeting with attorneys, and calculating every step like a chess game. Jordan had disappeared from the picture shortly after the first court hearing. Word had it that he had fled to another state after a restraining order was filed by Melissa herself. Apparently, the fairy tale turned into a nightmare fast. She never told me the details, but I saw the bruise on her wrist during one of the hearings. She wore a long sleeve, but the edge had slipped just enough. I didn't comment. Not my place. Not anymore. Still, I couldn't help but feel a bitter twist in my gut. For all the pain she caused me, I didn't wish that on anyone, not even her. About a month after the divorce was finalized, Ava called me. "Dad?" Her voice cracked a little, unsure. It was the first time I had heard it in weeks. "Hey, kiddo, can I come over? Just for a weekend?" I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Of course. Your room's ready. Always has been." She arrived with a small overnight bag and a bouquet of daisies. I didn't ask if her mother knew. I didn't care. We spent that weekend doing the simplest things, watching cartoons, making pancakes, walking in the park. She talked. I listened. Sometimes we just sat in silence. But it was a healing kind of quiet, the kind where you knew something sacred was being rebuilt. That Sunday night, just before bed, she hugged me tight and whispered, "Thank you for not giving up on me." I held her a little tighter. "I never could. You're my daughter. That doesn't change." And in that moment, I realized something. Even in the wreckage of everything else, some pieces of love remain. And those are the ones you rebuild from. The apartment was quiet again. Not the kind of silence that haunts, but the kind that hums gently in the background when peace finally begins to settle in. I'd made dinner nothing fancy, just spaghetti and meatballs, but Zoe ate 2 full plates, and even smiled when I jokingly criticized her terrible attempt at grating Parmesan. It felt normal, like the kind of evening we used to have when she was a little girl, long before life got so damn complicated. She was sitting on the couch now, curled up in the same throw blanket Melissa used to complain about, watching one of those teen dramas on Netflix. I was cleaning the kitchen, but my mind wasn't really there. I kept thinking about what had brought us here, how close I'd come to losing Zoe completely, and how, despite everything, there was still something worth salvaging between us. I'd made mistakes, big ones. I'd shut her out when she needed me most. I'd let my pain become a wall between us. But she had lied to me too by omission, maybe, but still. Yet somehow, through all that betrayal, all that hurt, we had clawed our way back to something that resembled a father-daughter relationship again. And that was worth more than anything Melissa ever tried to build with her soulmate. Zoe must have sensed my wandering thoughts, because she called out from the living room, "Dad, you okay?" I turned off the tap and dried my hands. "Yeah, just thinking." She muted the TV. "About Mom?" I hesitated. "Not really." "About us." She looked unsure. "Good or bad?" "Good," I said honestly. "Really good." Zoe looked down at her lap. "I still feel guilty, like if I'd just told you sooner." "Hey," I interrupted gently, walking over and sitting beside her. "You were scared. I get it. You were 16, caught in a situation you didn't create. I don't blame you, not anymore." She nodded, wiping a small tear. "Thanks, Dad." We sat there in silence for a moment before she asked the question I knew would come eventually. "Are you ever going to forgive Mom?" I took a deep breath. That was a harder question than she realized. "I don't know," I said. "Forgiveness isn't something you just hand out like candy. It's not about pretending things didn't happen. It's about deciding they don't get to control you anymore. I'm not there yet." "She's been trying to reach you," Zoe said softly. "She texted me. Said she wants to talk to you." I nodded slowly. "She still sees you?" "Sometimes. Lunch, coffee. She says she's trying to be better." I didn't respond right away. Honestly, I didn't care if Melissa was trying to change. That wasn't my concern anymore. What mattered was whether she was actually being a good mother to Zoe now. "You think she means it?" Zoe shrugged. "I think she regrets what happened, but I also think she misses being the center of your world. And now that she's not, she doesn't know who she is." That hit me harder than I expected. Zoe had grown up so fast, too fast, and she wasn't wrong. Melissa was always the type to need attention, validation. And when she didn't get it, she sought it elsewhere. Jordan was just the most convenient mirror she could find. I stared at the ceiling. "Do you want me to talk to her?" "No," Zoe said quickly. "Not for her. For me." I turned to look at her. "She's still my mom, Dad, and I know she messed up. But part of me needs to believe she's not all bad. That she's capable of change." I understood that. I really did. Because despite everything Melissa had done to me, she was still the woman I once loved, the mother of my only child. But that didn't mean I owed her anything. Not sympathy, not reconciliation, not even conversation. But maybe, just maybe, I owed Zoe a gesture, a step toward closure. "I'll think about it," I said. Zoe smiled faintly. That's all I wanted. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, the shadows of the ceiling fan blades turning like clock hands across the wall. I kept playing different conversations in my head, imagining what Melissa might say, what I might say back. None of it felt satisfying. None of it felt honest. The next morning, I got a text. "Melissa, can we meet? Just one conversation. Please." I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. "Me. One conversation. One time. Public place. You pick." She responded within minutes. "Melissa, there's a cafe near my work. Tuesday, 6 p.m.? Me. See you then?" I didn't tell Zoe. Not because I wanted to keep her in the dark, but because I wasn't sure if it would even happen. Part of me thought Melissa would flake, make excuses. But when Tuesday rolled around, she was already seated at the cafe when I arrived, nervous, pale, a half-finished latte trembling in her hand. When she looked up and saw me, she smiled. It wasn't the manipulative smile I remembered. It was tired, real, and I realized something in that moment, something I hadn't allowed myself to feel before. Pity, not love, not even anger. Just the aching, detached pity of someone who had finally outgrown their worst mistake. Melissa rose as I approached, but I stayed standing, keeping the small Formica table between us like a neutral zone in a decades-long war. The cafe smelled of burnt espresso and lemon scones. Outside, dusk poured orange light onto the sidewalk. Inside, every overhead bulb felt too bright for a conversation this heavy. "Thank you for coming," she said, voice shaky. Her blazer looked a size too big, like she'd borrowed confidence that didn't quite fit. I nodded, but didn't sit. "You asked for one conversation. Say what you need." She swallowed. "I wanted to know. I needed to apologize. Not the courtroom version. The real one." I folded my arms. "Go on." "I ruined us," she began, twisting the cardboard sleeve on her coffee. "I thought Jordan was magic, the life I missed out on. But he turned out to be a mirage, beautiful, from far away, toxic up close. By the time I realized, I'd burned every bridge back to you." "You didn't just burn a bridge," I said, keeping my tone even. "You blew up the highway, the exit ramps, and tried to tow the rubble away in a U-Haul." She flinched. "I know. And I'm not asking for another chance. I can't erase what I did. I can only say I'm sorry and try to make amends, especially with Ava." "Ava's healing," I replied. "But she's still piecing together what love is supposed to look like. She needs steady ground, not more quakes." Melissa's eyes brimmed. "I've started therapy. That first restraining order hearing woke me up. I'm learning why sabotage stability. My therapist says I chase validation because I never learned to sit with myself." "Sounds about right," I muttered. She produced a folded sheet of paper. "This is a notarized statement relinquishing any further claim on your 401 and the house proceeds. I already got my half in the settlement, but it feels wrong. You built that nest egg. I didn't." I took the document, scanned the signature. It was real, unexpected. "Why?" Because every time I see Ava, she asks if I'm done hurting people. I want to be able to tell her yes. For the first time, I sat. Not because the pity had blossomed into forgiveness. It hadn't, but because I recognized true contrition when I saw it. Melissa looked smaller than I remembered, and for a second, I saw the 20-year-old girl at our college orientation who laughed too loudly at my dumb electrician jokes. "What do you expect from me?" I asked. "Nothing," she whispered. "But if someday Ava gets married and we're both at her wedding, I'd like her not to worry that her parents will explode in the same room." A surprising warmth tugged at my chest. "I can work toward that." She exhaled a sound halfway between relief and grief. "Thank you." We talked logistics, holiday schedules, college savings contributions, and a mutual decision to stop speaking through attorneys for everyday matters. No promises of friendship, just boundaries. As I stood to leave, she said, "Ethan, do you believe people can change?" "I believe people can choose to," I answered. "Whether it sticks is up to them." I walked out into the evening. The air felt lighter. 3 weeks later, Ava and I sat on the floor, assembling an IKEA bookcase for her calculus textbooks. She hadn't asked about the cafe meeting, but teenagers notice everything. "So, Mom says you talked," she ventured, tightening a cam lock. "We did," I said. "We set ground rules. No fireworks at your future wedding." She smiled. "That's weirdly specific. Plan ahead," I joked. Ava slid the shelf into place. "Do you think you'll ever be friends again?" "Maybe friendly is enough," I said. "Friendship takes trust. Trust takes time." She pondered that, then nodded. "Fair." I grabbed the next panel. "Mind if I ask you something?" "Shoot." "What do you need from Mom now?" Ava looked startled, then thoughtful. "Consistency. If she says she'll show up, show up. If she can't, just be honest. No more fairy tales." That night I texted Melissa. "Ava values consistency. Don't promise what you can't deliver." She replied almost instantly. "Understood." It wasn't redemption, but it was a start. Spring melted into summer. Work thrived. MY Crew finished a massive solar farm installation, and the company sent us all to Colorado for a vendor conference. Jaime, the project manager turned girlfriend, came along, and between workshops, we hiked Garden of the Gods, sharing trail mix and dreams. "Under the crimson cliffs," she said, "I love how you show up for the people you care about." I thought of Ava, of late-night pancake talks and rebuilding trust brick by brick. "I try," I admitted. Jaime tucked a wind-blown strand of hair behind her ear. "I want to be part of that circle, if you'll let me." There, under the sprawling sky, I realized I loved her too gently, steadily, nothing like the hurricane Melissa had been, and I said so. When we flew home, Ava met us at baggage claim. She hugged Jaime first, a small miracle in itself, then threw her arms around me. "Guess what?" she blurted. "I got into the summer engineering program at UT." Pride nearly cracked my ribs. "Full ride scholarship?" "Half," she grinned, "but I'm applying for grants." Jean high-fived her. I handed over a key ring. "It's the key to my truck. You'll need wheels in Austin." Ava's eyes went wide. "Seriously?" "Seriously. It's an old F-150, but she's reliable. Just like her previous owner." She tackled me with another hug. Over her shoulder, I saw Melissa at the terminal door, waving. Ava waved back, turned to me. "She's picking me up for dinner. You okay?" I squeezed her hand. "I'm okay. Be back by 10 old truck, remember?" "Got it." Melissa met my eyes, nodded. Not a plea, not regret, just acknowledgement. I nodded back. As they walked away, Joan laced her fingers through mine. "You ready to go home?" Home. Not the house I'd lost, not the apartment walls echoing betrayal, but the life I was building, deliberate, honest, imperfect but real. I glanced at the departure boards overhead, flights to everywhere blinking in amber letters, and felt no urge to run. "Yeah," I said, "let's go home." And for the first time in a very long time, I meant it completely. 6 months had passed since the final court hearing, but I still remembered every moment like it was yesterday, the look on Paige's face when the judge denied her everything she thought she was owed, the icy silence from her parents, and the tearful yet hopeful eyes of Sophie, my daughter, as she clung to our fragile reconciliation. A lot had changed since then. I moved into a new place, not flashy, but peaceful. A modest 2-bedroom apartment just outside of town, close enough to work, far enough from memories. I painted the second room in light teal and cream, picked out a twin bed with floral sheets, and filled a small bookshelf with young adult novels and photo frames of our better days. It was Sophie's room for when she visited or stayed. To my surprise, she stayed more and more. At first, just weekends, then 3 days a week. Then suddenly, she was with me full-time. No fights, no lawyers involved. It just happened. She said her mom was too busy with her new boyfriend, or work, or just didn't talk much anymore. Part of me wanted to rage on Paige for neglecting her own daughter, but the other part was quietly grateful. I didn't need a court to tell me who Sophie belonged with. She decided on her own. Our relationship had changed. We weren't just father and daughter anymore. We were rebuilding slowly, carefully, like restoring an old ship, plank by plank. There were awkward silences, unspoken resentments, but also laughter and warmth. We took small trips together, mini-golf, weekend hikes, late-night milkshake runs. Sometimes she would sit quietly while I worked in the garage, asking questions about tools and wiring. Other times she'd pour her heart out about school, friends, and the wreckage Paige had left behind. I listened. I didn't try to fix it all. I just showed up. I didn't think I'd ever be able to date again. After 17 years of Paige's deceit, the idea of trusting someone felt absurd. But life, as always, had other plans. Her name was Elena. She was the office manager for the local architecture firm we did a contract for. Sharp-witted, unapologetic, and hilarious. We met over a coffee order gone wrong. Mine had oat milk. Hers had 2 sugars too many, and somehow we ended up laughing like old friends in the company break room. A few weeks later, she asked me out, not the other way around. Elena was everything Paige wasn't. Not perfect, but honest. She asked questions. She didn't pretend. She challenged me when I got distant. She never tried to fill shoes that didn't fit. She just stood beside me. When Sophie met her, it was awkward at first. But then Elena showed up one evening with a pizza and 2 copies of Sophie's favorite horror manga, and the 3 of us ended up binging a cringy zombie series on Netflix. No big speeches. No pressure. Just a night of dumb laughter and garlic bread. It felt right. I'd still run into Paige occasionally. Once at the grocery store, she was wearing sweatpants, no makeup, and pushing a half-empty cart of frozen meals. She barely looked up. Another time at Sophie's school event. She sat alone, looking small. Jordan, her so-called soulmate, had vanished months ago. Rumor had it he'd moved across the state with another woman. Poetic. She tried calling once around Christmas, left a voicemail. "I miss how we used to be," she said, her voice trembling. "I miss who I was with you." I deleted it. Not out of cruelty, but because I wasn't that man anymore. She wasn't that woman. And what we had? It wasn't real. It was built on convenience, lies, and comfort. And I was done building my life on sand. Sophie thrived. She made honor roll. Got accepted into a pre-college summer program for psychology. Said she wanted to help kids like herself, kids stuck between broken parents and buried truths. I told her I was proud. I told her I believed in her. And this time, I meant it. Elena and I aren't rushing anything. We're taking it one day at a time. She's got her own baggage. I've got mine. But we don't try to unpack each other's wounds. We just carry them together. And me? I'm doing okay. No, I'm doing better than okay. Because I finally realized sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. It's getting back to yourself. It's waking up and not hating the morning. It's laughing without flinching. It's letting go without looking back. And as I sat one evening on the porch, watching Sophie help Elena water the little herb garden we planted together, I realized something. This is peace, not perfection. Not a fairy tale, but real, earned, fought for peace. And I'll take that over a fantasy any day.